Okay, good evening. Good evening. Good evening, citizens, guests, council, and staff. Deputy City Clerk, could we start with the roll?
Mayor Cernanek.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Okay, if everyone could please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A little bit everywhere. Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Council, any changes to the agenda to consider?
I just have one question, really, for our clerk. Where I was late for the meeting, it didn't indicate late because on the very first vote it shows that I was absent, but then later on it shows, of course, I was voting. Should it indicate that I was late on in a minute?
I believe so. I can check with the city clerk and we can.
Okay, and at our last meeting, that would be the only change I would make.
Jerry, I saw it said you showed up at 8:09. It said that in the minutes.
Right, it says that I'm there at the beginning, though, so, and I wasn't. So that's what I was thinking. Okay, take a look at it.
Thank you. It's been referred. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of council meeting on August 5th.
I could do that. I have a motion.
Yes.
I have a motion to approve based on the clerk's certification the August 5th video recording as the minutes for the August 5th, 2014 regular meeting City Council be approved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Council ready to vote?
The motion carries with a vote of 6. Oh. What are you people doing to me? In and out. 7.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and for tonight, we do not have any scheduled guest citizens, but we do have a scheduled public presentation by David Mitchell. David?
Use the overhead.
Doug, could you turn on the overhead, please?
Thanks for picking me up there.
Good evening, council, staff. Feel free to do that whenever you want. Thank you for this opportunity. I love opportunities. In the 1960s, the South Platte River flooded. At the time, Littleton had a racetrack in the area of Santa Fe and Bellevue, and they needed to find places for their horses. We had a few acres on West Bowles that they could use, and it was a great opportunity, I love that word, for us to learn about horse racing. I have been in and around Littleton for a long time. Broadridge Shopping Center is an opportunity for private enterprise and the city to work together to make adjustments to a changing community, and it looks like they are. A small zoning change, a facelift, and a revitalized, re-energized retail area. A big attaboy to the Littleton staff and council. The free enterprise market works. Please let us remember the market works as we discuss urban renewal. Does there need to be some urban development in Littleton that might need some help? Possibly. Would it take place without Littleton's citizens being involved? No, definitely not. Here's an opportunity for the City Council to take a careful look at what the Colorado revised statutes say regarding urban development. I'm guessing that this isn't at the top of your list right now, so this may be material not seen before. Here's a Littleton report, last issue. This Littleton Review article used to communicate to our citizens is terrible. Who wrote this terribly misleading article? The staff? Certainly couldn't be our staff. Someone from Lyft? Ann Ricker? It does sound like one of her many presentations. This article and all of Ann's presentations just hammer on the 11 blight factors. Now, there have been occasions where I was not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and this was one of them. Something was bothering me over the several months that Ann was making her presentations. But I couldn't figure out what it was that was making me uncomfortable. Something was not right. It could not be as simple as the 11 factors. Then I read the same presentation in the Littleton Review, and it said, and I quote, and you'll see it on the overhead. Is this not going to work? Thank you. A little bit more if you can. The first one, and it says, Thank you. That helps. The first underlining says, blight is defined in state law. A clue for me. I decided to investigate and see what the definitions are. Here's what I found. State of Colorado website, statutes regarding urban renewal. Here is page 1, and I have a copy for each of you someplace. Here's page 1. Definitions, part of the state law. Council can make sense of it because they have a copy, but I'm not sure about the rest of the audience. Okay, that's what comes from the state statutes. Nowhere in the article does it include what the state statutes say regarding the use of the 11 blight factors. Nowhere here. It makes it sound like all you have to do is find 4 or more of the 11, you have blight. You can do urban renewal. You can do basically what you want. No, clearly not. If I take that and remove what's missing from the article, there is a big hole. Could they be important? Here is part of what is missing. It says, I don't know if this is left out intentionally, but what it says in the copy in front of you is you have to have 4 of the 11 blight factors and 1 of the following: substantially impairs or arrests the sound growth of the municipality, retards the provision of housing accommodations, or constitutes an economic or social liability. Missing from the article. Critical, part of state law, part of the definition. You can't have blight. You can't declare blight. You can't have resolutions like Lyft passed last night unless you have one of those 3 along with 4 or more of the 11 factors. These are also typically missing from Ann Ricker's presentations. At the very best, glossed over or minimized. Disingenuous is the kindest word that I could find. And And if you find one of those three that fit 4 or more of the blights, and it has to be a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare of the city of Littleton, and one of those three, and health, safety, morals, or welfare. Where in Littleton are these menaces? I don't know. I've looked hard. I have looked hard, and I don't know where. As of this time, they have defined the businesses that are to be included in two of the 4 blighted areas, Santa Fe Corridor and Columbine Square. These areas, these businesses, are a menace to Littleton? Let's look for these menaces. Oh, I found one. A health menace. O'Toole's...
2 minutes, David.
Thank you. O'Toole's is in the blighted Columbine Square area. The resolution was passed by LIFT last night. Good choice. I've talked to Chris and his crew. They do a great job. And they admit that there is dirt. A public health menace? Of course. It has dirt and maybe a few critters. It is a garden center, for goodness sakes. Where are the menaces to Littleton on Santa Fe, south of Main Street? And where are the menaces on the corner of Bellevue and Federal? Where would they be? We haven't gotten past the blight stage of the process and may not get past it if we follow state law. The state says we must follow their law. Ann says we must follow the state law. She said it last night. I have notes. When will LIFT start to follow the state law? Do LIFT and Ann Ricker believe that they are going to get away with this? Really? Do they believe they will? Thanks. I'm good shape. LIFT is passing resolutions negatively affecting businesses and not following state law. They passed 2 resolutions last night. You're going to see them soon. And I don't see where they qualify given the definitions that you have in front of you. Councilman Stallman is the liaison to the LIFT board, and possibly he could encourage the LIFT board and Ann Ricker to comply with all the sections of the state law. And never mention that urban renewal would take tax dollars from our schools, take from our city's budget needs, take from our county's budget needs, and others for up to 25 years. But that is for another time and another opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And now it's time for unscheduled public appearances. First, we have Dennis Trickey. And thank you for filling out the green card. You're limited to 4 minutes.
Well, I was looking for a sign-up sheet and didn't find it.
But you did the green card. That was the great thing. So.
Okay. Great. You know, I wanted to speak to the eminent domain situation. My wife and I have we're small investors. We have a small retail building on South Santa Fe, 2 shops. And we keep it rented out.
They can't quite hear you. Speak into the microphone,
Sorry.
Dennis.
I went to a couple of the LIFT meetings, and the first one, I think they were talking about blight, and then the last one, they didn't seem to want to talk about that. They said that part of the problem was that there was a crime in the area, that insurance rates were going up, that there were a lot of accidents, and they were using that to designate the property for urban renewal and eminent domain possibly in the future. I personally, in the 8.5 years I've owned the property, the insurance rates have been level, have had no crime. Amazingly, on Santa Fe, I haven't seen any accidents there. I'm sure there are in Santa Fe, but haven't seen any, so it's not a major problem. I did want to speak to eminent domain because I know it's been used in various parts of the country in different ways. I know it was originally designed for development of the railroads and highways and for public buildings. But I've always felt it was a stretch to go beyond that to, try, especially in this case where it looks like I could end up in a situation where my property, maybe there's an investor comes along and wants it, and the city likes his plan and might say, well, you got to sell it to him for X amount of dollars, or we're going to take it from you. That using eminent domain in that way just doesn't sit right with me. I think that actually, as far as urban renewal goes, I mean that's a different subject, I know, but I think the city council and the would be better off offering some sort of maybe insured loans or low interest loans to business people to help them to, if they need money. I personally don't need that, but I know that some of the businesses are struggling in this day and age and may need some money. And I think you would see the urban renewal take place with low interest loans. Like I said, I think, one of my concerns with the whole business is I lease those properties out. If it's designated as an urban renewal area, basically it makes it more difficult for me to rent it out because a lot of times, as you know, with leased property, tenants come in and they want to spend money on the property, and they aren't going to want to do that if they think that the building might be scraped down the road, and so I guess I don't favor using, eminent domain at all for urban renewal, and at least in this form. And I think basically we have enough big box stores and malls and things with along Santa Fe and Bellevue and Park Meadows and the new River Point. I think that we've all seen plenty of the big box stores around and maybe need to move on from that.
Time's up.
Okay.
Thank you, Dennis. And I know that there are many that, and even on council, that shared some of your thoughts on eminent domain, that it's used in rare circumstances. But yes, thank you for your thoughts.
Well, with low interest loans, maybe some other things would happen on their own.
Thank you. Can you catch that light? Colleen, could you turn off the light, please? And Paul? Oh, how appropriate. Sorry about that. That was good. I like that. Turn that on.
Good evening, Council.
Howdy.
I obviously don't have the green card situation quite figured out yet, but one of these days I'll catch on.
All you have to do is state your name, Paul, further.
Paul Bingham,
Thank you.
236 West Delaware Circle,
Name was
Littleton
sufficient.
80120, et cetera. I'd like to just briefly mention two things that are on your consent part of your meeting tonight, first reading. Broadridge, and I intend to talk about this tonight and 2 weeks from now for the second reading. I understand the current zoning on that shopping center. I've lived close to it since it was a wheat field. I also understand the rezoning that's desired, and I think that's just fine. The rezone with the PDO or whatever it is safeguards the whole thing. I think it should be done. That shopping center needs all the help it can get, and that's a big, big store over there that will suit a fitness center very well. Second thing I want to mention that I'm in favor of is the resolution G about the eminent domain thing. I think that resolution would be a great thing to pass. Thank you very kindly for your attention.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else for unscheduled public appearances? Carol?
Carol Breezak. I live in the 4th District. I left here home and didn't get the first page of my notes, so I'm going to have to see if I can remember everything. I'm a little confused about the resolution on eminent domain, and as I was trying to imagine how it would be implemented, these are some of the questions that came to my mind. Is a property owner going to go to the Urban Renewal Authority and ask to be condemned? And if that's the way it's to work, then doesn't criteria need to be established for which requests for condemnation are going to be accepted and which ones won't? Unless, of course, you expect to accept all of them. If a property owner requests to be condemned, then who sets the price of the property? Who's the buyer? Is the property owner going to set the property value and then come to urban renewal and ask them to buy it? There can't be a friendly condemnation until the property's been condemned. We know that the property owners want to take advantage of a tax benefit, but the threat of condemnation and eminent domain has to be real and compulsory. The only way to condemn a property is if the condemnation really takes place. And it can only take place if there's a threat of eminent domain. So you will either use eminent domain or you won't. There's no halfway. It has to be a real threat to the property owner because it creates a harm for him. And the tax benefit exists because the harm exists to him. If you're going to pass, and I'm talking about the bracketed language that's in your resolution, so it can go one way or the other, but I'm addressing the resolution as if the bracketed language was included. If you're going to pass the resolution tonight without the bracketed language and that you're not going to use eminent domain, then add some language that you shall not revisit that topic for at least 2 or 3 years. Because we all know you can come back next week or 1 month or 2 months from now, and you can pass another resolution that allows eminent domain to be used. Your resolution is not binding, but you could put some language in there that would restrict it for a period of time. I just want to leave you with a statement from the minutes of the Littleton Riverfront Authority's December 10th, 1983 meeting. Quote, "We are absolutely not planning on condemnation," unquote. But we know the entire 33 acres of riverfront was condemned. Their words were only words. If you're going to do this, then do it in a way that provides the citizens the confidence that your words will be honored. Thank you. And I support the Broadwidge rezoning. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else for unscheduled public appearances? Pam?
I'll bring you a green card after this.
State your name.
I will. My name is Pam Chadbourne, and I live at Crestline in Nevada in downtown Littleton, District 1. So I'd like to talk tonight because a few months ago I asked for a study session by the council on the citizens' or taxpayers' view of urban renewal. And I've received absolutely no reply to that request. And yet that's a compelling request to the 7 of you up there, because you represent us, you live here, you pay taxes, and you should want to know this too. In addition, you are decision makers, and you are public decision makers. This is public money that we're talking about.
It's good.
So what I'm looking for is models of urban renewal scenarios. And that is, some kind of financial models. I'm pretty sure that at least half of you have experience with this in your work lives. So you know what I'm talking about. You know that it's possible. You know that it is required for any sound business to do this. And I expect my city to have this capability in these models. I haven't seen that they even exist, and I've not seen the products for them. And I'm entitled to that, and so are all citizens and taxpayers of Littleton and all business owners, all of us who invest any portion of our lives here. So the models need to say, what are your guidelines or possibilities for urban renewal investment by the city using TIF? Because TIF commits part of our tax return for up to 25 years. We don't get it. And there's a presumption of a certain amount of properties, parcels, and dollar amounts that would be excused in this way for the TIF. So the model would assume, let's say, 1% of the properties every year for the first 10 years, or just discussing the assumptions is valuable to all of us. And then the outcomes, the financial outcomes, including a failure rate, is also valuable to all of us, and it's part of how you make decisions for urban renewal and how the Urban Renewal Authority will make decisions as well. And until you, the city, our representatives, and our staff create these criteria, you have not done your due diligence or what we deserve in Littleton. And I say this as a person who grew up here since I was 2. We are entitled to this. I don't see it happening, and so I'm staking a claim. I'm making a statement. We are entitled to some kind of prospect for what you're going to commit in terms of tax increments and numbers of parcels and total dollar amounts for how long. We are entitled to this. You are our representatives. I look to you to do this. So the concept is, are you going to commit $60 million over the next 12 years in 3 $20 million chunks, one $20 million chunk, 2 $10 million chunks, and $41 million chunks? Give us, or 20 or something like that. These are just scenarios, but just do 3 of them. Those who live by the crystal ball might eat glass, but these aren't crystal balls. These are just planning scenarios. They give us a chance to experiment with certain scenarios. None of them are going to come true. But at different points in time, we're going to come close to different ones, and we'll have an idea about what to invest in and what not to. And we, the citizens, are entitled to this information so we can lobby you when it comes to these decisions. So please get this model going, have the staff do it. That's what my request is. Thanks.
Appreciate your concern, Pam. I would mention on the side that it's premature till we see what types of projects might even be interested, but thank you. Anyone else in public appearances? Frank? State your name.
Good evening, Frank Atwood. Doug, I need a light here. Or is this part of the process? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'd like to put the city of Littleton, that have them be aware that a petition is being circulated with regards to eminent domain and with regards to tax dollars being used for urban renewal, and that the basic premise is that in addition to the trust and faith that we have in our city council, to also give the citizens themselves the opportunity to make the decision of whether or not eminent domain and taxpayer dollars would be used, especially when taxpayer dollars might take dollars away from such activities as public schools, public parks, and other activities. We look forward to circulating the petition And if anyone would like to discuss it with me, I'll be here for the rest of the meeting, or they can call me at 720-260-1493. Again, 720-260-1493. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else for public appearances? Doug?
That turn on its own?
It's the magic thing.
Doug Clark, Houston Waring, District 4. The latest Littleton report, in an article on page 1 titled Urban Renewal Facts and Myths, What Do the Words Mean?, says, opponents of urban renewal use condemnation to create fear and false stories regarding local governments kicking people out of their homes for the good of the community. I am one of those opponents of urban renewal. And apparently one of the stories that the Littleton report says is false about people being kicked out of their homes is a story about how the Riverfront Authority, which is now LIFT, condemned every single property in the riverfront area, including the Holmes trailer park, which resulted, in fact, in people being kicked out of their homes for the supposed good of the community. The reality is that the Urban Renewal Authority did condemn every property, every piece of private property in the area, including the trailer park, and the reality is that people were kicked out of their homes because of urban renewal in Littleton. But the Littleton report isn't just rewriting past history about what actually happened with urban renewal, it's making false statements about what is currently happening right now with urban renewal. Same article in the Littleton report says no single-family private residences will be included within a project area except those where the property owner has specifically requested inclusion or where a residence is located within a commercial area and houses a business. This picture shows you two single-family private residences that are included in the new Santa Fe urban renewal area. Neither single-family residence houses a business. The red house in the background is the private residence, or was the private residence, of Mr. Maestri for the last 9 years. He very recently moved out of state to Minnesota and wants to move back. The white house in the foreground is the private residence of the Franz family, who have lived in this single-family residence for the last 54 years. The LIFT board voted last month and voted again last night to include these single-family private residences in the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan, even though the agent for the property owner was present at the meeting, objected to the creation of the urban renewal area and the inclusion of this property in the urban renewal area. And those houses are indeed on the urban renewal area. They're located right there. So, what our government is claiming in the Littleton report will never happen is, in fact, happening right now. And what they are characterizing is as false and fear stories, or actually facts about what happened in the past and facts about what happened last night. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Anyone else for public appearance? Seeing none, we will move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be passed with one motion. Any item on the consent agenda can be pulled by any council member, and they will be read by title. Consent agenda item 6A is Resolution 47-2014. It's a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding between the City of Littleton and Arapahoe Community College Police Department.
I move pull.
Okay. Consent agenda item 6B is ordinance 29-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading approving the rezoning of a portion of the Broadridge Plaza Shopping Center known as 6905 South Broadway from B1 Neighborhood Business District to B2 Community Business District. Consent agenda item 6C is resolution 57-2014. It's a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding among Arapahoe Community College, Littleton Adventist Hospital, and the City of Littleton for community health paramedic training. Consent agenda item 6D is resolution 64-2014. It's a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement of the Colorado Information Sharing Consortium. Consent agenda item 6E is a resolution. It's 65-2014. It's a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Littleton and Sungate Kids. Consent agenda item 6F is a resolution. 74-2014. It's a resolution approving an update to the City of Littleton's 3-mile plan. And consent agenda item 6G is resolution 75-2014. It's a resolution concerning the use of eminent domain for urban renewal projects.
Pull it.
Okay. And so looking for a motion to approve consent agenda items 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E, and 6F.
So moved.
Second?
Randy. Second.
Okay. Thank you. Council ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you, Council. Going back to consent agenda item 6A, resolution 47-2014, Councilmember Cole.
Yes, I pulled that for clarification. I talked with the police chief today about this, and so he's ready to answer a couple of questions that I discussed with him. Just one background comment on this. With Part A, for example, twice in past 15 years or so at ACC, someone has threatened to kill a faculty member. One of those was the parent of a student, and one of those was the student himself. At least the second one wound up in our municipal court, and it was pretty serious threat from the student. Anyway, so that's a little background. And at that time, and maybe still, the college has its own police force. We'll call it that. So I talked to the chief a little bit about what we anticipated needs might be in the future, depending on what is in what we're approving tonight. I asked, for example, whether or not our police would be involved in investigating non-felonies at the campus, and if the college indeed did away with having its own police department, would we then be thinking of taking that over and what that might mean to the council? So.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So to answer your questions and to discuss what we talked about previously.
And you are?
Chief Doug Stevens, Chief of Police here at Littleton Police Department. I don't have a green card, I'm sorry. So I can fill one out, though. One of the concerns or questions that Councilwoman Cole had was Littleton Police Department's jurisdiction concerning all crimes that occur on the campus of ACC. Because the campus is located entirely within the city boundaries of the city of Littleton, the police department, as is laid out in this memorandum of understanding with ACC, the Littleton Police Department reserves the right to investigate any crime, felony or misdemeanor that occurs on the campus. The agreement allows for us as the Littleton Police Department to operate more efficiently because the Arapahoe Community College Police Department investigates crimes that are misdemeanor crimes on campus. They also investigate, as a matter of practice and allowed by the Memorandum of Understanding, felony property crimes that would occur on the campus. So say an auto theft or something that would occur, they could investigate that, or a theft of a computer. while we would take the report on that particular felony crime as laid out in the MOU so that we ensure that we capture those felony crimes occurring within our city. We would still take that report, but they could investigate that. Felony persons crimes, sexual assaults and the like, aggravated assaults occurring with serious bodily injury, those would be entirely investigated by the Littleton Police Department. Should at some point Arapahoe Community College decide that they wanted to go a different direction and not have a regular police department, that's something that we would have to, as an organization, the Littleton Police Department would have to assess and evaluate what our needs would be as far as providing police services to that location. As with anywhere else in the city, we're prepared to provide those services. We can respond as needed anywhere in the city. I'm very confident that we could do that. And I'm also believe that should that occur, I think it's unlikely that that would occur, but if it does, I'm sure that we would work with the administration of Arapahoe Community College to come to an agreement if we were to have to provide additional full-time resources to the campus to provide an on-site security element or an on-site officers like we do in the high schools and middle schools here in Littleton. I'm sure that we would have an agreement and very confident we would work out an agreement on how those expenses would be covered between the two entities.
And if we did that, the school is larger than, I think, any of the public schools where we have resource officers. So will we be thinking 1-2 officers given the 6-day-a-week pretty much full-time use over there?
Yeah, it's a pretty large area, obviously, with many different buildings, and so it would be more than one officer. Obviously, we would need to do a pretty thorough assessment of the services that have been provided by the police department there and their staffing and what they felt was adequate, and then we would make our own determination based on that study and that examination as to what services we would need to provide, how many personnel, vehicles, that type of thing.
And as you and I discussed, I just wanted to get that out now, not that we're deciding that, but that we would know the kind of process we'd be looking at if we shift into higher drive with this. So I'm supporting this, but wanted to have that conversation here.
Great, and happy to answer the questions.
Councilmember Valdez.
Chief, is the information or the criminal activity over at ACC, is that added into the our analysts' information or data bank?
Yes, so the crimes that occur on the campus are reported to the Littleton Police Department. All crimes are reported. It's part of the Clary Act, I believe, that a federal law that mandates that any college campus reports all crimes occurring on the campus. We do get those reports. Those are included on the raids online that we saw in the council study session, so you will see those crimes.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Seeing none. Councilmember Cole, motion.
So I move to approve resolution number 47-2014, approving the memorandum of understanding between the City of Littleton and Arapahoe Community College Police Department.
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
Give it to Bruce, please.
Council ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you. Councilmember Brinkman on consent agenda item 6G.
Thank you. Yeah, I pulled this item primarily because I wanted to make a few comments about it before voting on it. I've written some of my notes down here. As much as I'd love to just wing this one, I want to be very careful in my wording, and I want to make sure that my words are very intentional. I'm not opposed to this, but I am incredibly troubled that this is the way that we've chosen to deal with this issue in this manner. Condemnation and eminent domain are nasty words in every circle. The government, with developers, with the public. No one wants to use these words. No one wants to hear these words. However, they are tools that have been used in redevelopment for years, and there are examples of misuse, no doubt. And there are also examples where the use has been a benefit. Generally, there's also a very strong public aversion to condemnation and eminent domain, which is understandable. And the legislature has also created a very arduous process in order to be able to use these tools, which is also understandable. This council has made absolutely no secret that we do not support condemnation and we do not support eminent domain in Littleton. Apparently, that's not enough. Now we have to cast a vote to remove a tool that we already said we wouldn't use. The citizen petition being circulated to put on the ballot the elimination of council's ability to do virtually anything related to urban renewal without going back to the ballot. And this will essentially kill any urban renewal efforts in Littleton, which is its intention. So we can all go back to driving past the underperforming shopping centers that we've been complaining about for years. We can all watch as developers create shops, housing, jobs, and businesses in the communities that surround us. And we can all sit here and try to match our rising costs with our shrinking revenues. That's the reality. That's not fear-mongering. That's not storytelling, and that's not lying. No one at this dais has ever or will ever lie to anyone in this community about what we can do, what we will do, and what we have done. I believe that this community knows that we are thoughtful and thorough as we work through all of the issues that are facing us. And I believe that there is a high level of trust among the citizens regarding their local elected representatives. We are a representative government, and as such are tasked with representing the best interests of the community. And by its own design, our process has many sides. And we are tasked with choosing one every time we vote. We were elected by thousands of people to do this work. Not one person, not two people, not a half a dozen people, but by thousands of people. And not to push every decision back to the voters. This is a democracy. Stand up and argue your point. Disagree with opinion. But use facts. Facts are facts, and I deal in facts. I'm not playing into the fear-mongering efforts that would have this community believe that we intend to destroy Littleton through condemnation and eminent domain. I will support this motion tonight because it is something I have always said, and if it now needs to be in the form of a motion and a vote, then so be it. But let me be very clear. I do not support the ongoing removal of our tools that we have been provided by charter and by statute to do our elected jobs. I do not believe that a yea vote from this council tonight on this motion will stop the lies and the scare tactics being used to discredit, devalue, and distract from the benefits of urban renewal. I stand strong in my commitment and the commitment this entire council made to support LIFT and to support the redevelopment planning that will keep Littleton viable and healthy long into the future. I will continue to serve my role as a representative of my overall community, and I will not let my decisions be guided by negativity, lies, and fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brinkman. Councilmember Stallman.
Thank you. Appreciate Councilmember Brinkman's comments. Aldous Huxley in Brave New World said the facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. The couple of comments. The first is there was a comment last night at the LIFT board meeting having to do with and it was reiterated by a citizen this evening concerning the issue of the threat of condemnation. The topic last night was stop talking about, a suggestion to quit talking about condemnation proper and talk about the threat of condemnation. Interestingly, I had a situation in my employment where we, with Arc Thrift, had a store in the Fort Collins Foothills Mall that was within an urban renewal area. The Fort Collins City Council had passed a resolution similar to what we're contemplating tonight, wherein they indicated they would not be interested in, actually I take that back, I'm not sure they passed a formal resolution, that they just basically communicated that they weren't in favor of eminent domain. They messaged very clearly that they weren't interested in using condemnation as a tool. That actually had something of a slightly different impact maybe than what's being represented, because what it basically did was it empowered the property owners and gave a little bit more leverage to the property owners and the lessees because they knew they couldn't be forced out because council up there was not interested in condemning them, and therefore they had a little bit of leverage on the developer, which ultimately worked out to their advantage. The deal ultimately did get done. So the threat of condemnation, or removing the quote-unquote threat of condemnation, in some respects, if you believe collectively that we're really pro-development as a council, then we should not do this, because the condemnation, as was suggested, really is a powerful tool to help the development community. Conversely, if we do remove that tool by saying we won't engage in, and we message to the community and the developers that we're not going to do condemnation as part of the urban renewal process, it sort of more or less implies that maybe we're not as pro-development as has been potentially painted. You do not have to take my word on this. You're welcome to call Darren Atterbury, who is the city manager for the city of Fort Collins, have a conversation with him and find out if he agrees with my assessment of the whole thing. But I offer that up to anyone who's interested. Darren's a very capable city manager and does an excellent job. Secondly, and I appreciated Mr. Clark's comments about not wanting to be disingenuous. It was interesting in that during the Western Welcome Week parade, there were signs up that basically were saying, "Stop eminent domain abuse." I confess to not having really the foggiest idea what that means, but it sounds relatively ominous, and I'm pretty sure we don't want to try to frighten people who don't know as much as collectively we here in the audience and on council might know. So to that end, I thought it would be helpful to actually, in context, and also to what Ms. Brinkman was saying, is actually refer, as one of the other citizens did, to the actual state statute. Now, this statute was changed. And I'll say this, I'll give it to you twice. So again, don't take my word for it. Look it up, Google it. You can read it. You can make your own opinion on this, form your own opinion on this. But it's Colorado Revised Statute 31-25-105.5. That's Colorado Revised Statutes 31-25-105.5. And this legal document, or this state statute, reflects changes that are current through all the laws passed by what's referred to as the first regular session of the 69th General Assembly of the state of Colorado, which is through 2013. In fact, what Mr. Clark suggested about eminent domain being used in 1983 or the mid-1980s is in fact correct. We know that the laws were different back then, and eminent domain was much more liberally utilized. This is what the law says today. Essentially, it's a two-step process. It says that no private property acquired by eminent domain by an authority shall be subsequently transferred to a private party, as in a developer, unless one of the four following attributes applies. It's either a friendly condemnation where the owner of the property consents in writing to the acquisition of the property by eminent domain by the authority. The first owner has a right of first refusal to repurchase the property if it's not used as part of an urban renewal project. The property itself has been abandoned for some reason, which probably doesn't occur very frequently. Or that if the property is acquired, it will leave the owner of the property with what's referred to as an uneconomic remnant parcel, and therefore it means that the authority should acquire the sliver part as well to the parcel that's desirable. If none of those conditions apply, then the following three conditions all have to apply. So it's the and the and again, as was referred to earlier. The property has to be designated as blighted or in a blighted area, and an urban renewal project has to commence within 7 years. The property owner or the residents or the businesses on the property have to have a right to rehabilitate the property by notice from an urban renewal authority. And only if all of that fails and the property is critical for an urban renewal project, only after all the other remedies fail can a holdout parcel be brought in, and only if the project is not viable without that parcel. Now, any owner of property located within an urban renewal area may challenge a determination of blight made by a governing body pursuant to this statute not later than 30 days after the date of determination of blight is made as civil action in district court for the county in which the property is located. And any authority that exercises the power of eminent domain to transfer acquired property to another party, private party as authorized herein, has to adopt relocation assistance and land acquisition policies to benefit displaced persons consistent with the articles, so forth and so on here. That includes compensation in the form of assistance to displaced persons, and if there's a business concern that's displaced, the authority has to make a business interruption payment to the business concern not to exceed the lesser of $10,000 or 1/4 of the average taxable income shown on the most recent federal income tax return. Now, again, that's what the statute says. Lyft board last night reaffirmed their resolution to not use eminent domain in assembling parcels. The urban renewal plans that are being proposed that have not yet been approved, what Lyft did last night was recommend plans go to council. Council has final authority. Those urban renewal plans cover properties that are principally in major commercial corridors like Santa Fe and the Columbine Square area. To Mr. Clark's point, there may have been an error of omission. I doubt if it was an error of commission, but if the intent is to remove residential parcels from such neighborhoods, certainly that can be effectuated by parcel. So we wouldn't want to not be clear in our entire consideration of all of the plans that are coming to us. It's another layer of protection if council passes this resolution. It's been said in Lyft board meetings consistently, it'll be said again here. The intent of urban renewal and tax increment financing is to provide financing for infrastructure improvements. Colorado legislature has set it up so that it's extraordinarily difficult to effectuate an unfriendly condemnation. If, as I strongly suspect, council tonight passes a resolution that says we have no interest in doing such a thing, then that is an awful strong set of messages to send to citizens, to homeowners, to the business community as to our intentions. Predominantly, and again, it can't be reiterated strongly enough. If there are a couple of residential parcels in the commercial districts, we can take care of those. But the vast majority of the residences in the city of Littleton are not included in an urban renewal plan area. As such, if someone comes to you and says the city is going to take your house, as a good consumer, you should start asking questions about what the law says, where the plan boundaries are, and is that really making sense based on everything that's been described here and will be described again in the Lyft board meetings and again at council repeatedly. So I hope that provides some information of benefit to everybody listening at home. As such, I will support this. I tend to agree with Councilmember Brinkman. The emphasis here is to do the right thing for the community. The more tools we put away, the more we compromise our potential ability to do that. But in this case, I think we're sending absolutely the right message that this council has very little interest, in fact, no interest in doing anything that would be any eminent domain proceeding that's in that is not of a friendly nature that would be requested by a particular property owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Cole.
Maybe I should wait because I want to take care of the brackets that are in this resolution.
No motion is on the floor yet. Councilmember.
I'll wait.
Beckman.
Yeah, I just have general comments. In the summer of 2011, I hadn't really decided yet that I was going to run for council, but I was at the budget meetings. Those were the budget meetings for 2012. And I'm going to talk about this because I think we need to go back to why are we doing this? Why would this council want to even stick their foot or touch the third rail of urban renewal when there seems to be this discussion out there? That was the discussion for the budget for 2012. Mayor Clark was the mayor and Jim Woods was the city manager. And they began with, as always, the manager's comments. And I don't remember the exact words. I think probably it's still somewhere maybe on the web page to be able to see it. But during that manager's message, Jim Woods talked very much and in some detail about how the economic future was very bleak for the city of Littleton. He said words to the effect that a future council and a future mayor and a future city manager will have to figure out how to drastically look at what are the city's functions and the expectations that the community has of what a city provides, because from what he could see, there was going to be a need for some drastic cuts. And he commented basically Mayor Clark wouldn't be there and Manager Woods wouldn't be there, but somebody would be there. That was when I decided I wanted to be one of the somebodies to be there. And that's why I'm here. That was the primary reason why I ran for council, because I love the community. I love what it has. I was very familiar with our budget over many, many years. And I had a city manager and a mayor agreeing that it was a very bleak circumstance unless somebody did something. In fact, I was kind of surprised that the meeting wasn't called right then to have somebody do something, but the can was kicked down the road, and here we are with this council. The fact is that the cost of services, as we've pulled out of the recession, have increased dramatically. It's not just Littleton and what we pay for fire and police and those kinds of things. It's the cost of concrete, it's the cost of roads, it's the cost of doing maintenance on vehicles and all the things that a city has to do. That is increasing at a certain rate that has, across the board, been higher than it was during the recession periods. At the same time, the city is not increasing its revenues to the point where you can see, and it was presented to us at a study session by the finance director. It was on the other page of the Littleton report that was discussed. We can see a point where revenue no longer keeps up with what we anticipate the cost of service. I worked for the city for 37 years, and I did budgets for quite a lot of it. I was responsible for writing up drastic cut budgets for two different times in the police department when we laid off dispatchers. We had 2 humane officers, we laid off 1. We had 2 parking enforcement officers, we laid off 1. We also laid off police officers, and it happened in the late 80s going into 1990, and then it happened around 2001, and then later moving into the recession. So I've been there, and I know what happens. People are cut because 80% of the city's budget is personnel. And if we're going to have to find a way to meet the new reality of what our revenue is, we have to begin to cut back. It's not a threat. It's the reality that this council's dealing with, that we've talked about at study sessions, we've dealt with during 2 different budget sessions. And it's why we are trying desperately as a council to find a way to renew economic diversity and growth in the city of Littleton. And so what we've done is we've looked to Centennial and South Jeffco, Lakewood, right on our north border, what's being done in Englewood. And the manner and the means that they're using to redevelop already developed and already built inner city type construction like we have in Littleton. Roads are already there, curbs are already there, sidewalks are already there, utilities are already there, all those things are there, and they would need to be redone and replaced, is urban renewal, because that provides somebody the opportunity to come in with private money with an idea, but knows that the city is going to back it up by trying to help them as much as they can to fix the public infrastructure to support that project. Otherwise, the dollars don't make it. We don't have money to build these projects. We're not building these projects. All we're doing is we want to say that we can create a condition with the TIF that we can pay for all the public improvements that would be needed to redevelop over some period of time. And I also know from talking to members of the school board and talking to members of county government, this can be done in a way that there's no loss of school revenue and no loss to county revenue in the way that it's done. It's a non-producing or minor producing tax revenue that is established for those areas. And you begin to look at the facts and you'll find out that the opportunity to develop it and increase it is a better future for the schools and for the county and for the city. And we guarantee that we still have an operating budget. These are very tough times, and these are very good ideas to try to do it. And of course, nobody's interested in eminent domain or doing any of the things that are being used as the scare tactic. And I know they're being used as a scare tactic because I talked to people that were encountered during the parade, and they were said, do you trust council to keep from condemning your house? I know people have walked into the businesses and said, how do you like being called blight? What are you going to think when they come in and condemn you? That's not what we're doing here. So a lot going on. Let's stick to the facts. The facts are that when Jim Woods and Doug Clark sat in the budget session of 2012, the word was put out by that mayor and that manager that times were going to get tough for Littleton unless a future council and future mayor did something, and future manager, and that's why we're here doing it.
Andy? Councilmember Stein, excuse me.
Thank you. I've been called worse. I have a bit of a distillation of what the council members preceding me said. Severe distillation, but with a different conclusion. Councilmember Stallman talked about wanting to send a message to the development community that we are pro-growth, and I am well acquainted with the development community, and I can tell you that their collective opinion is that we are not pro-growth, and that is a holdover from previous administrations. I think we need to do what we can to try to attract the quality developers, not the fly-by-nights, but the guys that are really in for the long haul to come to our fair city and take a look at some of our larger projects. Obviously, the NSER project comes to mind, the EchoStar project comes to mind, and others, both of which are on the Santa Fe corridor, which is the subject of tonight's discussion. I was not here at the last meeting, but I did do some research and find out the genesis for this resolution. And I would note that very likely I'm going to be in the minority here tonight based upon the vote of the last go-around. But I would say that by noting that both existing Colorado urban renewal law and the Colorado revised statutes that Council Stallman specifically referenced either prohibit the use of eminent domain outright or place severe restrictions upon it. In any event, council would have to approve each instance of eminent domain in each project and therefore vote affirmatively to do that, which this council, myself included by the way, has made a stand that we would not do. To me, it's just inartful and not graceful to have this double redundancy where we've agreed to say that we're not going to do something and then we're not going to do it again and then we're not going to do it again. And so I am not in support of this resolution.
Okay. Councilmember Valdez.
I am adamantly opposed to eminent domain and condemnation, but I think taking this tool away from future councils is not a good way to go right now. I think as read by Councilman Stallman, it really does protect the city and the citizens and the property owners. To take this away right now, as well as for the future councils, I think is not a good way to go, and I cannot support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Brinkman, you want to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution concerning the use of eminent domain for urban renewal projects.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Additional discussion among council?
So I want to address the bracketed parts of the resolution. The first one in line 33 says, unless requested by the property owner, and the second one in the next subpart, the foregoing restriction shall not apply where the property owner has requested the use of eminent domain with respect, etc. I think there's a fine point, and since this is a legal document, I think fine points are really important. Whether the person has the legal right to request, I'm not sure, but I am moving to substitute for the bracketed, the first bracketed phrase, unless the property owner agrees to the use of eminent domain. And in the second one, the last part of that starts where the property owner, substitute unless the property owner agrees to the use of eminent domain. So I'm moving that, and then maybe I can speak to that if it gets seconded.
Open to a second?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry, can you
So
just...
essentially, the meaning is, instead of someone requesting it, and there may be a legal issue about how they can even request it, it would be a matter of unless the property owner agrees to it, because then it's in the plan, and then they would agree to it. They're not initiating it, but they would be agreeing. And if they don't agree, then we would not use it.
No, can we ask the city attorney if he wants to weigh in on this?
I don't have a problem with the language as proposed in the brackets in the council packet. I respectfully disagree with Ms. Breezak about what citizens may request or not, and I have seen it done in other communities where a citizen has requested the use of what has been referred to as friendly condemnation. But I certainly have no objection to the language as modified either. I think it's a distinction without a legal difference.
It's a very fine point. So
I don't think my legal advice is that it doesn't make a difference. So if it makes the council more comfortable with the modified language, I'm okay with it either way.
At this point in time, the bracketed language is not included at all. It's optional. And I'm not seeing a second to the motion, so we will not consider it.
So neither the bracketed language or what I'm suggesting as a substitute would be included.
At this point? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have...
So, all right, under the make a motion, I'd like to move that we include the bracketed language as indicated in the resolution.
Second.
So the motion there, Councilmember Stallman, comments?
What the city attorney said.
Okay, we got it. So we have an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing none. Council ready to vote? This is on the amendment to include the bracketed language.
The vote is unanimous. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Council. We now are back to the main motion. Additional discussion. I just wanted to hopefully briefly add to my comments. This is one of those things where I think human nature tends to have concern where there's not certainty. And with the areas that have emanated from the discussion at the authority, LIFT being the authority I'll mention at this point in time, we don't know what projects will be there. We don't know if there's an interest in the developer in bringing anything. I do know that some property owners have made comments to me that they're quite happy to be included because it does provide what Mr. Trickey was talking about, is the opportunity to make improvements and add to that by seeing that the public improvements are occurring in conjunction with what they might be doing to the property. Properties do not need to change hands in an urban renewal. It can be used by a property owner to enhance in the public improvements that might go along with that. It's one of those things as well where the city has had challenges before in trying to be a bank involved in this. We don't really have total bank powers, although we can support a bonding. and that bonding would go out to citizens on this. And so I haven't seen folks stepping forward to offer that as an alternative and jumping on that because, whatever interest there might be, we're not particularly a bank or set up to be a bank as a city. And unlike the city of Denver that also has a lot of federal money that because of their size of their population that flows to the city so they can actually in effect set up a financing mechanism for projects. So we're a little bit different on that. Also with regard tax increment financing, it is incremental taxes that are part of the financing. And with that, at least in the discussions, it's typically advised not to use 100% of the incremental element that's there. Somewhere between 50 and 80% is what has been typically occurring with regard projects. So that a park district or a school that is dependent on property taxes will see some element of incremental taxes that will come. It may not be that full 100% of the increase in value. It might be somewhat diminished from that. But again, as we are looking at, and our purpose very much in our discussion is to deal with commercial properties. That's what we're looking at this point in time. And there may be reasons for, because of public improvement areas, that some elements of residential property might be included, but it's for the purposes of getting that public improvement through and financed so that can be included in the financing, and certainly that's my understanding of where we're going. We have had, and the council has had presented to it, as well as a number of citizens that have participated in this, opportunities to see positive impacts of using urban renewal or business improvement districts or downtown development authorities. And this is where the private sector is working in conjunction with the public sector to have good things happen for the community. And these are tools that we have, but the city itself can't create a business improvement district or a downtown development district authority in and of by itself without participation from the property owners. And so this is very much taking a look at that. So folks have heard my stories about eminent domain, very, very high threshold. My grandfather did not lose an opportunity to say how part of his legacy was lost with the creation of an interstate highway. We're not looking at doing that in the city of Littleton, that I'm aware of anyway. But he did not take an opportunity not to indicate that it took away some of the legacy that he was able to leave with regard to his farm. So it's a very high threshold. We've talked about it before, and I'll stop at this point in time. Other discussion, council? Council ready to vote, and the motion is to approve the resolution without the bracketing. Or excuse me, with the bracketing as originally stated. I'm sorry. So that's the motion that's before us.
Well, the brackets are there, but not the bracket.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. The words. Right. So.
The vote is 5 in favor. The motion carries with Councilmember Valdez and Stein voting no.
Thank you, Council.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on to second reading, I'd like to make a motion. I'd ask you to bear with me while I kind of try to craft it by way of explanation. So it's been clear to me, at least tonight, through the scheduled public presentation, the unscheduled public appearances, and now this significant discussion we've had with consent agenda item G, resolution 75-2014, that there continues to exist a significant degree of confusion. I could go on, but I'll just stay with confusion on the meaning of and the application of and the proposed thought process of council with regard to eminent domain. So with council's approval, and I'll make a motion in a minute to do that, I would like to ask staff to perform some type of an outreach to our community, either through flyers or other articles such as appeared in the Littleton Report. I'll leave it up to staff to come up with a means and method and media to convey that message. So what I'd like to do is to make a motion to direct staff to further attempt, I hope this time successfully, to educate the residents of the city of Littleton and dispel some of the myths and rumors surrounding what we've been discussing today.
There's a motion being made. Second, looking forward.
Well, I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Stallman.
I have discussion.
Okay. Councilmember Stein, any further comments at this stage?
Let me see if anybody else has anything to say first, and I'll circle back.
Councilmember Beckman.
When one of the citizens was making the presentation and presenting Colorado Revised Statute 3125-103, which was our handout, and they were reading it and interpreting how they read it, honestly, I was reading and interpreting it a little differently because I saw a word "or," and I didn't think that was part of the discussion. So I would like to know about that word. I would like to know about how I was reading it and they were reading it so that we have a better understanding. There is confusion. I'm wondering, in support of what Councilmember Stein is asking, that it be somehow on using the multimedia facilities of the city to have either we record a training session or we record a presentation with whatever to go through the actual law and go through the actual parts of any other guidance that comes from the legislature or from other types of areas in terms of administrative rules. Because I think there's a lot of question out there, and I certainly am one of the ones who would benefit from some clarification.
Other comments? Yes, Councilmember Stallman.
Well, I guess I'd be potentially. I mean, I think anything that you know, the watchword is always openness and transparency, and the more of this that's out there that people have access to, certainly when we get, I think the Lift Board is starting to do a better job of getting their material on the website so that it's accessible. Certainly when we get to that point, or Planning Board does, we'll have a lot of this information available too as well. But given that the Colorado Revised Statutes are not the easiest things to navigate, and given that it is a topic that can be daunting, I wouldn't be opposed to having some additional information available for people if they so choose to go put it in a place that's easy to access from the standpoint of just going to the city website, as opposed to having to scour state websites or LexisNexis or so forth and so on.
Other discussion? Councilmember Valdez?
I think it's a little too soon to do that right now. It seems to me that we're trying to either say what we like or don't like about a building that hasn't been designed yet. I think we need to hear from Lyft to see what they have, and then let's bring up that education or that information, because I think then it'll make more sense to everybody, besides just bringing it up now, and then when Lyft brings something forward, I assume they will eventually. I would rather see what Lyft has, and then let's do a breakdown of what it is. I think that might be more useful than just to put more information out there with really nothing to tag it onto.
Comments?
I guess I'll just respond, and then I would agree with Councilmember Valdez in that there's been a lot of premature conversation about essentially folks that have been against something that hasn't even yet been proposed, and so I would agree. But I do think that some type of an FAQ on a general basis, which could be revised to a greater degree of specificity as the project or projects were to come to fruition, which may not be for a while. And I guess I would say that so as to not overload people all at once with a great deal of information, but maybe start on a satellite 30,000-foot view of very general FAQs and then sort of tailor it to some of the more specific projects as they came online.
Councilmember Cole?
I could see, I don't necessarily respond well to educate people, even though I am an educator. In this context, I'd rather inform, and I think we can use, as was said, the TV, our TV channel. We can use the Littleton Report, but I think it needs, if we do this, and I could support doing this if it were essentially clarifying very basic points, including what we did tonight, so that people know they're not going to have some Mack truck coming in and rolling right over them with something. There's going to be, nobody's going to take property hostilely. And I think that's a huge concern, for one. But I agree with Jerry, until we know more about what we might be doing. I mean, in my view, my greatest fear is if this does go forward, no developers are going to bring anything worthwhile. I'm sorry. I don't mean to insult developers, but we're losing businesses all over the city in competition to the internet. I mean, to online sales. And we can have the best plans in the world. We might not make any money at all on this. So I believe we want to inform, to let people know, again, perhaps through the Littleton Report, here's what someone thinks, and here's what the law says. This is where the protection is here that people seem to be so afraid of. So, and this is maybe more about why we think we need to do some renewal in terms of the crisscrossing revenue expenditure lines.
I have no objection to the use of the word inform over educate, and I just picked one out of the air, so that's fine with me.
It's because of something in the past that didn't go over very well at all with this, with the city.
Well, we'll go with inform then.
Okay. Councilmember Brinkman?
I'm somewhat mixed on this, primarily because I do believe that we have been doing pretty substantial outreach, starting with last year with a symposium where we invited 5 municipalities and spent 2 hours learning about urban renewal, put it on a CD, and have it available to the entire community. Ever since that point, we have had numerous discussions up here. We've had probably at least 6 study sessions where we spend anywhere between an hour to 3 hours becoming more informed ourselves on the issue, and obviously then sharing that information with the public as we do through our broadcasts and internet. We've also, I think, had something in a Littleton Report. Probably over the last year, there's been at least every issue, if maybe skipped one or not. But so I think that there's an effort being made. I think where I kind of split a little bit is that, yeah, I believe that there's always more information that can be shared, but it's when you share it and why are you sharing it. If you're laying out state statutes and council's justification for it and you're feeding that to the community, I don't think that's proper use of marketing time, energy, effort, and budget. I don't think that this is, I mean, urban renewal is not something that any of us have done before. We do have members of our staff that have had experience with it. So it isn't something that we all come in knowing what to do. Of course, we didn't know what to do when we got elected to council either, but we're figuring it out. So taking this journey with the community, I think, is important, and I think all of us going along the path of learning this and becoming more educated ourselves, more informed, is important. I'm not sure it's a marketing campaign that we mandate the city manager to do as much as it is keeping this very top of mind when opportunities present themselves, when there's a like again an opportunity where it becomes important for us to put a little bit more energy, effort, even budget towards something. I would support that, but I'm just not 100% there with a motion and a mandate to do something that I don't know if we know exactly what the message should be. I don't want to repeat everything we say up here in something or print a bunch of legalese. I think it has to have a high value so that it has a higher level of importance. So, mixed.
I'm going to take the prerogative to make some brief comments on this. Appreciate the sentiment and as far as informing folks, and I think that a lot has been done. I'll use the word that Councilmember Valdez did. I think that it's premature at this stage to necessarily look for a lot of information. If folks are having trouble finding the LIFT website, if we can direct them, that would be probably the best piece, because there's frequently asked questions that are there. Or if we have a directory of those council study sessions, if folks want to necessarily have a reference point for that. But beyond that, at this stage, we don't even have a project. I mean, there's several steps that have to move through. And I believe in their outreach, and if they haven't, that would be, I think, outside the process. I have been in a position of informing the property owners, and they actually have an audience with LIFT Authority, whether it's Jim Reese or Corey, their attorney, to have any kind of consultation that they would need, and they're the ones that are going to be absolutely impacted by this. And if folks have trouble understanding a private-public partnership, I think anyone on this council can probably have that conversation with folks that they would raise, and it may carry a lot more credibility than something that's just on a pamphlet on that side. So, I mean, those are my thoughts, and at this point in time, rather than trying to say come up with the means, method, and timing. I'm willing to let the process move along.
Okay, I'd still like to call for a vote. We have a motion and a second.
That's what it's going to be. There's a motion, and the motion is to provide direction to staff to devise means and methods to inform folks to dispel myths regarding urban renewal.
Thank you.
That's the motion before council. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 5 opposed, 2 in favor. The motion does not carry.
Thank you, council, and thank you for the sentiments expressed by all the council. Next, we move on to ordinances for second reading, and they will include a public hearing as well. First up is item 7A. It's ordinance 19-2014. It's an ordinance on second reading authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for reimbursement of costs associated with the operation and maintenance of traffic control devices on state highways within the city limits. And this is a bit of a cleanup because we got the second reading before the first reading, so we had to basically clean this one up. Any additional comments, Director Lawston?
Council, this is an ordinance that would authorize an IGA that we do once every 5 years with CDOT. We maintain all of the signals, striping,
signage on Santa Fe Drive. That's allowed by CDOT, and they reimburse us over $40,000 to do that.
Okay, thank you. I will open the public hearing. Do we have the roster? And you could probably bring them both down, Mike. Bring them both. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. With regard item 7A, there's no one assigned to the roster. Does anyone wish to make some public comments here? Limited to 4 minutes. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Council looking for a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 19-2014, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation for reimbursement of costs associated with the operation and maintenance of traffic control devices on state highways within the city limits on second reading.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Valdez and Councilmember Brinkman. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, call for the vote. Thank you, Council.
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is agenda item 7B, which is ordinance 27-2014. It's an ordinance on second reading approving a First Amendment to intergovernmental agreement for emergency services with West Metro Fire Protection District. Any comments, City Manager?
Just take any questions from the council. I think the council is clear that we, from first reading discussion, that we are moving workers' comp work for the fire department, which runs somewhere between about 57 or 64% of our workers' comp claims, to West Metro, which has had a very successful program in reducing workers' comp costs and getting their employees back to work quicker, which is where they want to be as well.
Excellent. And Councilmember Stallman?
Just, yeah, and the concept I'm fine with. I was going to ask just a couple cursory questions. Per the exhibit, just specking out the math in terms of the cost might be somewhere in the $23,000 to $30,000 range-ish.
Right. Yep.
And that's a three-way split with the partners, and the partners are on board with this?
Correct.
And it's in the 2015 budget?
Correct.
Winter.
Okay. And the only other question is, what's the length of time for the agreement? Open-ended?
It matches, I'll have to check. It was an amendment to the existing agreement with the coverage of Trailmark and the use of the facility. Hold on one second. My computer is now locked up. Come on. Do you have a paper version?
What was your question?
Yeah, what's the term?
My computer is locked.
The original term of the West Metro agreement was January 1, 2013 till December 31, 2023. And it didn't look like the amendment had a term date on it.
Yeah, so we didn't change the end date, and then our termination, if we're not happy, is 12 months advance notice.
Thank you. Any other questions? Looking for a motion?
Motion that the ordinance approving the First Amendment of...
Excuse me.
Oh, you have to do a
I need to
public
open
hearing.
the public hearing. There's no one on the roster. Does anyone choose to approach? Seeing no one, I close the public hearing. Now looking for a motion. Thank you.
Motion that the ordinance approving the First Amendment to intergovernmental agreement for emergency services be approved on second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second before council. Any discussion? Seeing none, looking for a vote.
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you, council. Now move to, with no general business, no consideration for authority, board, and commission matters, move to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick things. Well, one very quick. Just want to let you know that the budget went to the printers this afternoon, so we will have it for you shortly. Don't have a date for you, but we were finalizing it at the 11th hour here today, so we're excited about it. And as a reminder, September 8th and 9th will be your budget study sessions. So it should be.
And we're going to follow kind of the same process you've done in the past?
Correct. Yeah,
cool.
We'll use the policy question approach, and Excellent. You'll see it. I think there ended up being about 37 in that range policy question, so about what we've seen. To Councilmember Beckman's earlier comments, if the revenues and expenditures were different, you might have more policy questions, but we're squeezing the turnip here for the most part. And the other thing, which actually ties a little bit into just the efficiencies and the budget, is we're in the process of merging together, and a couple of you I've talked to about this, our building department, our planning department, and our engineering department to create a one-stop shop. I'm not sure what the final term is going to be, but essentially have two project specialists at a front desk counter reception, which will be a one-stop shop for anybody coming in for any land use application, any street cut type of thing, or any engineering question, or any building permit application. And they'll go to one spot, and those two staff members will be cross-trained in all three of those areas and be able to handle everything that we've ultimately, and we're in the process of this, of determining should be an over-the-counter permit. And so those two staff members are being cross-trained right now. And it's a fair amount of work because we have to put together the applications, make sure we understand the checklists, have the backup staff for these folks so that as they learn over the first many months and potentially years, we are able to respond. But we're very excited. Unfortunately, this isn't truly cutting edge. People have been doing it for many years in other communities, but I think it will improve the level of our customer service. It'll improve the efficiencies, and it's really giving us an opportunity within those three departments/divisions to look at virtually everyone's job description and what those duties are and how they should be really realigned for a lot of what you spoke to tonight, which is the redevelopment of the community as opposed to a lot of new development that's coming in, because that does change our orientation from a staff level perspective. And so because we've just kind of piecemealed over the many years, we've got virtually every staff member involved in some way, shape, or form, what should be more at this front desk project specialist over-the-counter approach. So it's going to be exciting. I'm hoping for early October, but I'll be happy if we can really make it happen by the end of the year. So stay tuned to see that. You'll see some policy questions related to the implementation of this. And Glenn Van Nimwegen, our planning director, is working on the space part of this. So we have a physical space where people can come to have some privacy and ask either very simple questions or very detailed questions, depending upon what their needs are. And hopefully it'll really improve our over-the-counter, and people will be in and out and be able to build or get their land use application that they were looking for. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Cole.
Well, so anybody's still watching, if you want to come to Coffee with Council this Thursday morning, 7 to 9 at Jake's Rhubarb on Main Street, we'll be there to answer questions and inform. But on a second issue, I am requesting, I would like to request that the city attorney bring to council an amendment to whatever we have. We have, I think, regulations related to appointing people to the Urban Renewal Authority and so forth. So wherever that piece of document exists, I'd like city attorney to bring us an amendment that would require all future appointees to live within the city of Littleton, and all members going forward live within the city of Littleton, meaning that if somebody moves out of the city, just as a council member moves out of the city, they're no longer qualified to be on that board. Anyway, so I'd like you to bring us that, and then we could discuss it.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I have a question. I thought we already had that.
I'll second.
Okay, Jerry just seconded it.
To the best of my knowledge, we don't. So if we do, then we need to.
Well, when I was sitting on the museum board, we had a museum member that moved out of the city and had to resign the board.
Yeah, but I don't think that applied to the authority. So
do we have it for our boards and commissions, and you're just asking us to put that on the lift?
Correct.
Yeah.
To include, yeah.
And we have something on the lift authority otherwise. So.
We don't need a motion for this. I mean, unless the council is not in support of limiting future people on your boards and commissions, including LIF, from being, requiring them to be a city resident, we can just bring this back.
And they're the people that we appoint.
Yeah, it'd be future folks. I mean, I think this council and Councilmember Cole and I have had this conversation earlier.
First and second, so you're willing to withdraw the motion?
Director. They don't have to be.
We're talking about your appointees.
Right.
Well, what I'm looking at, we have something or other that says how many members are on it and so forth. If a Mack truck runs over all of us and you're on the same truck, who's going to remember this? So
He'll bring it back.
Yeah, I think
if it needs to be.
Okay.
And if you withdraw the motion, then we can move on.
Okay. So as long as we're going to be addressing. Thank you.
We will address it as we
Thank you.
You, though.
That?
Be nice. Okay. Councilmember Stallman.
Well, it's that council report you've all come to love and appreciate.
You're going to be brief tonight?
Yes, I am going to be brief tonight, actually. I've been coached.
We're already taking longer than I'm going to take.
I know. Well, three things. Wanted to make some follow-on comments to some of the unscheduled public comments this evening. There was a citizen comment about making sure Lyft complies with state law. Lyft does, in fact, have an attorney engaged, and that individual is responsible for verifying that the board is, in fact, complying with state law. And as a practicing attorney, I think everyone's in good hands, and they're complying accordingly. The conditions survey does, in fact, cover in detail many of the questions that were raised about where is blight resident and how is it resident in the area identified. I would basically remind council that the law stipulates that blight has to be present in the plan area. It doesn't have to exist on every parcel. And so, but the conditions survey is voluminous and very specific, and we'll see that in short order. There was a comment about tax dollars being shorted from the school district and Parks and Rec. The tax base as it exists today, or at the point in time that a plan is approved, will continue on. If no urban renewal ever occurs, the same taxes will get paid to those entities, the school districts, the sanitation districts, and Parks and Rec. It's the increment that goes to, as Mayor Cernanek indicated, that goes to pay off the infrastructure bonds. But the existing base continues to pay for the other services as indicated. We don't have a lot of and can't have a lot of tax increment details as was requested and as was discussed last night in almost the same question came up with respect to the LIFT board, because there are no specific projects at this point. Again, as Mayor Cernanek indicated, last night LIFT board member Dennis Reynolds had indicated that the concept of a plan that they're going to recommend to us is not a plan per se. It's more of a policy recommendation for us. The plan is probably a state statute kind of terminology, but the truth of the matter is there just are no level of specific details that can be presented at this point in time, as was requested by virtue of the fact that there are no projects identified at this point in time. So it's the cart before the horse. We talked about riverfront condemnation laws changing in 2004. And again, LIFT is going to make a recommendation to council. Council will then have to approve the plan. And at last night's LIFT board meeting, they approved Columbine Square as a single district. We'll start the tax increment clock when council adopts a plan because it's a relatively self-contained and small area. It'll basically encompass both sales and property tax, TIF, and we've dealt with, again, it said they were basically going to say to us that the eminent domain is available only with council approval. Council has indicated tonight that we do not approve such a thing and therefore would not expect it to get used. And again, TIF only applies as a gap financing vehicle. There is a big expectation that Urban Renewal Authority, LIFT, is not going to approve projects that do not have a substantial developer equity component included, whether it's equity or debt, but a developer financed component. The TIF is gap financing. You were there. And it's intended to fill holes in the development project where the numbers don't work out because of a significant infrastructure deficiency, like a floodplain drainage issue on an NSOR, for example. Santa Fe will probably be multiple districts as projects are proposed, and what that basically means is they're going to come to us with a plan. We're going to likely approve the overall plan, but then we'll go back and approve sub-districts or sub-areas of that plan as projects come to us so that the tax increment financing clock starts on each individual project, which is exactly what Tracy Huggins was saying that the Denver Downtown Authority does in terms of a lot of their projects. We can obviously amend the plan down the road to reset tax bases for specific projects as necessary or as the opportunity presents itself, and we'll talk more about that later. The other item I was going to report upon was the August 6th library board meeting. It sounds, let's see, apparently at this juncture staff is not recommending the library annex. We had talked about the library annex, and I don't think that's in the budget, according to the library board at this juncture over at Aspen Grove.
It's in the budget.
It is in the budget. Okay.
Question to follow.
Bingo. Okay. The other thing that was pretty cool, they are, well, we'll get to that when we get to the budget. Ed, I think this was actually in the Littleton Independent, but Ed Bemis's granddaughter spoke at the library on the 29th of July, and she actually, this lady's name is Maya DeBus, and she left an original copy of Bemis's autobiography. There's like 2 of them, and they were passing this thing around. It was very cool. There's one in the archive over at the museum, and there's one at the library now. And they had an astrophysics night. They had astrophysics night. They had a legal night where you can ask an attorney a question, and they had 1,682 kids sign up for the summer reading program, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Valdez?
3 short items, and I mean short items. One, summer is just about over. I think our next regular meeting is in September, so my tie will return. Thought you were all curious about that one. The school has started up, I believe it started up this week, I think within the city, within Littleton. So get out there, support the schools and all the activities, extracurricular stuff that they do. And last but not least, I want to thank Mr. Stallman for allowing me to replace him for the Council with Coffee this Thursday at Jake's at 7 a.m.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Stallman. He didn't tell me it was 7 a.m. when I originally agreed, but thank you. That is it.
Thank you for your blind agreement. Councilmember Brinkman?
No report.
Councilmember Stein?
Shockingly, I have a report tonight. I think this is my first, so I'm going to ask for a little latitude, although it may still, in its length, be shorter than Councilmember Stallman's abbreviated report. I'm not sure. I'm troubled. I'm troubled by what I see. What I've seen this week in particular, Councilmember Stallman and referenced a sign that he saw when he was with me and Councilmembers Cole and Brinkman on the little buggy or covered wagon or whatever it was as we were in the Western Welcome Week parade. I see a lot of hate and a lot of fear-mongering, and what Councilmember Stallman alluded to was a sign on a door negatively, ascribing negative motives to council, to the city attorney. And I know it was just a little sign, and maybe I'm reading things into it, but I don't think so. with regard to our urban renewal district in general, the authority, and council in particular. And I'm troubled about that. We talk about how we like to live in this small town, and we get along, and we've got a low crime rate, we've got a great school system. But what I see is a level of divisiveness that has been created around this one particular topic that saddens me. And one of the things I saw, in addition to the sign from the cover, if you will, of this buggy, was a number of our citizens sort of furtively sneaking around and trying to get people to sign a particular petition. And we've been talking about that petition for days now, and I'm sure all of you know what it's about. Seated here throughout the meeting today, some of you are still here and some not, but the folks who were here and made presentations were people who I consider to be sort of seminal in my own career, if you will. One of the folks was first suggested that I run for council. Another who sort of closed the deal and assured that I would run for council, and a gentleman who actually made my first campaign contribution. And so these folks have had a very positive influence on my life in the last few years. I consider them to be my friends. I look up to them in many respects in their level of commitment, their intelligence, and their level of organization. But in this case, I think they've really, really missed the boat. And I believe that this effort to, however the petition itself is worded, to terminate this city's ability to create value for our future generations in the redevelopment of our very few precious remaining amenities, is doing a very great disservice, to the citizens. We, your council, are your elected body. You've elected us. We have an election coming up in just over a year, and if you don't like what we're doing, then you can throw 4 of us out, and perhaps the next election get the rest of us, I don't know. But these other folks who are circulating this petition are neither elected nor are they appointed, and they do not serve at our pleasure, and I do not believe that they serve at the pleasure of the residents, the 43,000 residents of the city of Littleton. So when one of these individuals approaches you with words such as, the council is trying to condemn your property, they're going to throw you out of your house, and I don't know if there's 2 or 20 people still watching. I hope that most of you have better things to do than watch our council meetings on TV, but if anybody is watching this, I would beg you, strongly encourage you to ask tough questions, do some independent research, and figure out what it is that urban renewal really is about, what it is that eminent domain is really about, and how virtually it is impossible to apply that to any property, let alone a single-family residence, for which it is virtually impossible. Should the efforts of this small group attract enough signatures that are approved to get it on the ballot, then the city will put on a special election at a cost, it's been estimated $40,000 to $60,000 of the taxpayers' hard-earned dollars. They will not pay for it. The city will pay for it. And then we will have a vote. And I would encourage you, should that calamity occur, that you, the citizens, go to great lengths to educate yourself as to the pitfalls and the negative ramifications of a vote for the virtual elimination of our urban renewal authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stein. Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
We really need to focus on some positive things. It's a little tough when it seems like we're getting negative when we're really trying hard to do the right thing. But one of those positive things is Western Welcome Week, a tradition in the city. It just was done again successfully. I went to a few of the events. I wasn't able to go to all of them, but I hear that every one of them was held to the traditions of how it was done in the past, and that really takes a lot of work. And we have new people in town at every one of them, and they like what we're doing, and they like the way we try to keep that small town atmosphere. It's real important, and Western Welcome Week's part of it. Along those same lines was the Criterium, one of those events that had its detractors, couldn't understand why we would do something like that. But, I think everybody who went to it had a really good time. Again, good news. I hope that it works out for the downtown merchants. We had several comments that it was bringing people to town that would not otherwise have seen our stores, and that's a really good thing. So I hope that all worked out, but that was certainly a great event. Again, making Littleton that kind of place that people want to come to, spend some money and bring their kids and maybe find a place to live and go to school. So all good stuff, and aside from all this other, we keep the good stuff going.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a couple comments to council to remember. Next Tuesday, we have our meet, greet, and eat in Trailmark from 4 to 6 p.m., but you might want to plan on your travel because we do have a study session that starts at 6:30, so your attendance for that last 15 or so minutes to allow for your travel to be here. We're within touch of our 125th anniversary of incorporation, and did want to share with folks that on September 13th, which is coming up fairly quickly, from 10 to 3 p.m., Historic Littleton, Inc. Is sponsoring their 3rd annual scavenger hunt. And if you haven't looked at it, it's actually a worthwhile participation because the first prize in the scavenger hunt is $500. So if you're short of cash or undercompensated or underemployed, that's always an opportunity to get involved in the history of Littleton. And talking about that, just wanted to briefly mention that the World War II exhibit that's at the museum right now is wonderful. Even, I'm not sure whether it was yesterday, today, or tomorrow that they're taking the AP photos away, but the volunteers that are out there that are getting dressed up at the two farms are wearing World War II garb. And just to let you know that we've come a long way, one of the things that they've indicated is it takes them longer to get dressed now because of the makeup. So that's, and then I wanted to mention a couple things about Western Welcome Week. Not only is it a wonderful thing for the citizens in the city to come and celebrate together, but if you had a chance to get around and you talk to the crowd, I get goosebumps on how far people will come to participate in the events during the week, and that they come back year after year, and it's one of those things that they wouldn't miss. And just to let you know, the Twilight Criterium that we had, and thanks to Councilmember Brinkman for bringing it last year. This was our second opportunity, and I will tell you, I was at the Pro Challenge Stage 1 yesterday, and these are folks that are international teams and sponsorship, but there's a lot of folks that are in Colorado because it actually is an opportunity to showcase a lot of Colorado. But I had a chance to, in my very timid and shy way, talk with a number of folks, and the success that Littleton had with the Criterium actually made it to the crowd. Because I would say, geez, I'm just Phil from Littleton, and they would make some comments about that. So it's really exciting how the word gets around that we can have some fun and throw some good events. And at least in talking with the restaurants and those folks that were serving libations, I know it was a great success on that front, and very much enjoyed that. And just a quick note to council: pay attention to your email because we may need to be changing some of our training dates for next week. So we'll leave it at that. So with that, the last comment I will make is Laurel. Well, first of all, the young man that won the men's elite at the Twilight Criterium is a graduate of Heritage High School. Mm-hmm. And the young lady who won the women's elite is just 18, a very recent high school graduate. She's actually taking a year off to devote to professional cycling. Right. And I asked her if I ever participate in an event, what's the secret that she has that she could share so that I could go as fast as she might go. And she says, you have to go out and get a pink sports bra. So with that, have a good evening. We're adjourned.
They don't want it.